Okay, so we're back. We're broadcasting. We're back on Facebook. Had to broadcast from my phone on Facebook. How's everybody doing? Hey, this is Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. I'm a talk show host, researcher, lecturer, and writer. Don't know what happened on Facebook there. I was broadcasting through Crowdcast, and people were saying they couldn't hear me. Okay, so we're back. Had to broadcast on my phone. All right, so we're dealing with the Colin Kaepernick economic boycott. Okay, Colin Kaepernick economic boycott. You have two Los Angeles activists, civil rights activists, who are planning an economic boycott of the NFL. Okay, and there's an article from EURweb.com about this. Civil rights activist Najee Ali, who's one of the leading activists in Los Angeles, and he's the CEO of Project Islamic Hope, and Pastor K.W. Tullos, Western Regional Director of the National Action Network, LA chapter. He's also pastor of Weller Street Baptist Church, and they're calling for a economic boycott of the NFL until former San Francisco 49ers quarterback Colin Kaepernick has been signed to an NFL team. So you've heard me talk about Colin Kaepernick in the past. I actually did a presentation last year about his protest also, and I dealt with the history of the National Anthem written September 13th, 1814 by Francis Scott Key, a white supremacist slave owner. And I've seen online petitions about an economic boycott, okay? But this is one of the first ones I've heard a really formal economic boycott organized. This is one of the first ones I've seen like this on this level, okay? So this is something that's really good, all right? Everybody share this broadcast on your own Facebook page. Invite your friends to tune in also, okay? All right, so protests are planned outside of games and facilities of the LA Rams and the LA Chargers, all right, during their preseason games, all right. Hopefully this will continue into the regular season if Colin Kaepernick still is not signed, all right. And I boycott the NFL basically anyway because I don't watch any of the games. I live in Detroit, and I'm not watching the Lions. I don't get caught up in football, you know. I don't get caught up in basketball either. So now the press release was sent. Was sent to EURweb.com. EURweb.com. The press release was sent there. And people watching on Facebook, please share this broadcast on your Facebook page. Okay, please share this broadcast on your Facebook page also. Okay. All right. So I'm going to share with you what the press release said, right? And they hit on some really good points here in the press release. They said, quote, "There is no doubt that Colin Kaepernick is being blackballed by NFL owners for exercising his First Amendment rights in a nonviolent, peaceful statement. Colin Kaepernick was trying to draw attention to racial profiling, police abuse, and the disproportionate amount of people of color being killed unjustly by law enforcement nationally." Okay, and if you look at the original article, if you look at the early articles about this from late August of 2016, I know NFL.com had one of, if not the first, one of the first articles. I think it was the first article on this protest from Colin Kaepernick. It was written by Steve Weish for NFL.com. And Colin Kaepernick explained that he was taking the knee. He started sitting down. This was during the preseason. They noticed it during the second preseason game. First he started sitting down. Then he started taking a knee. And he said this was because of African Americans, the people of color, the oppression we were receiving, also the oppression at the hands of the police, unarmed African Americans shot and killed, things like this. Okay, so he made it clear. He said he wasn't against the military. He wasn't against the veterans or anything like this. All right. And what happened was you had people who just took offense that he would protest against the national anthem. And I don't even think a lot of people actually understood the history of the national anthem and the racist history of the national anthem either. Okay? So, the press release goes on to say Kaepernick was trying to draw attention to racial profiling, police abuse, and the disproportionate amount of people of color being killed unjustly by law enforcement nationally. The NFL is a form of the modern day plantation. This is what the press release says. The NFL is a form of the modern day plantation. Most of the players are black and the ownership is all white. They're treating Kaepernick like a runaway slave. They're treating Kaepernick like a runaway slave, making him an example so other players get the message. Do not get too uppity or we will blackball you. The parallels are very much like slavery, except the players are $1 million slaves under contract who have made billions of dollars for the NFL. Okay? And if you read the book $1 Million Slave by William Roden, who's a sports writer, he deals with this in his book $1 Million Slave. Okay? So check that out also. All right, now, those on Facebook, can you all hear me all right? I hope so. Okay, good. All right, share this broadcast on your own Facebook page. Invite your friends to tune in also. Okay, if we look at the original article from Steve Weish from August 27th, 2016. August 27th, 2016. This is for NFL.com. It's called Colin Kaepernick Explains Why He Sat During National Anthem. Colin Kaepernick explains why he sat during National Anthem. Now, this basically was the first article about Kaepernick's protest, and nobody knew it was going to blow up the way that it did. But in the article, it says, Colin Kaepernick said, quote, "I'm not going to stand up to show pride in a flag for a country that oppresses black people and people of color. Okay? To me, this is bigger than football, and it would be selfish on my part to look the other way. There are bodies in the street, and people getting paid leave are getting away with murder." Okay? And then in other interviews he did shortly after this, he explained it more. He talked about how he was not against the veterans and anything like that, right? So very, very important to note this. Now, when you look at the national anthem, excuse me, the national anthem was written by a white supremacist slave owner named Francis Scott Key, September 13th, 1814, during the War of 1812. During the War of 1812, okay? And a lot of people point to the third stanza of the national anthem, where it talks about neither hireling nor slave, but the whole song is a white supremacist song. It's written by a white supremacist slave owner at a time when America was fighting against Great Britain once again. They were enslaving African people, depriving African people of life, liberty, and freedom and the pursuit of happiness, while they're fighting for their freedom. Then at the end of the War of 1812, now what's important to note is you're going to have about 6,000 African Americans who run away, who are enslaved, and they run away from the United States, and they go to the British side to fight against the U.S. Because once again, the British say, if you come fight for us, we'll set you free when the war is over. This is the same thing they did during the American Revolutionary War. This is why on the low end, you had 20 to 30,000 African Americans who were slaves who ran away from the colonies to the British side and fought for the British against the colonies. They were called loyalists. In the miniseries The Book of Negroes on BET was about this. Because in the American Revolutionary War, Great Britain said, you come fight for us, we'll set you free. The U.S., it was of the 13 colonies, was only basically till their back was against the wall that they let slaves fight in the American Revolutionary War. And it was about 5,000 who fought on behalf of the colonies. It was between 30,000 to 20 to 30,000 on the low end who fought for Great Britain during the American Revolutionary War. But at the end of the War of 1812, you're going to have the U.S. demand that Great Britain return back to them their runaway slaves. There's about 6,000 of them, okay? And they said no, all right? They said no, okay? So, and rightfully so. So this is the history that you're dealing with. So the National Anthem, which was originally called the Defense of Fort McHenry, the National Anthem is a white supremacist racist song, all right? And even Jackie Robinson, who broke the color barrier in 1947 for the Brooklyn Dodgers, even Jackie Robinson, in his 1972 autobiography, I Never Had It Made, talked about why he could never stand for the National Anthem again and why he could not salute the flag. And this is a former military man. This is a guy who served in the Army during World War, I think it was during World War II. He served in the Army. Okay? So, there's a lot of history surrounding this. There was a good article from Smithsonian.com, dealing with the Star Spangled Banner, official website of the Smithsonian Institute. And let's see if we could get this one up here. Also, check out the article from History.com. Key penned Star Spangled Banner, September 13th, 1814. This deals with Francis Scott Key. Key pens Star Spangled Banner, September 13th, 1814. Okay, I'm gonna try to get the one up from Smithsonian.com. Okay, because that's a really good one also. All right, so back to the press release here. So they say the NFL is a form of the modern day plantation. Most of the players are black and the ownership is all white. They're treating Kaepernick like a runaway slave, making him an example so other players get the message. Do not get too uppity or we will blackball you. The parallels are very much like slavery, except the players are $1 million slaves under contract who have made billions for the NFL. Read the book $1 Million Slave by William Roden. Now, African Americans, Latinos, and anyone who believes in social justice should boycott all things NFL. This is what the press release says. African Americans, Latinos, and anyone who believes in social justice should boycott all things NFL. So all the white people marching out with Black Lives Matter, they need to boycott the NFL also. So Kaepernick stood up for all people of color when he didn't have to and could lose millions of dollars in salary and endorsements. Kaepernick was not in danger. He has led his team to a Super Bowl appearance and has enough money and fame to deal with the police if he had to. I hope he's been investing his money correctly. I hope he's been saving his money. I'm just saying. All right. It's African Americans and Latinos who continue to be in danger of being unjustly killed by police. It's our sons and daughters. Kaepernick realized this and took a knee for us and used his platform to highlight those facts nationally. Now, the press release goes on to say, now it's our turn to take a stand on his behalf. The NFL could care less about players' First Amendment rights, social justice, human rights, or the fact that African Americans and Latinos continue to be killed by police nationwide. You know, now it's interesting that the NBA moved the All-Star game, the 2016 All-Star game, they moved it from North Carolina, where the North Carolina transgender bathroom bill was in effect. And they moved it from North Carolina because of the transgender bathroom bill, and they relocated it somewhere else. Now, when have they canceled a game or moved a game from Chicago or Cleveland because they said too many African Americans were being killed by police, or because Tamir Rice was executed by the police, or because John Crawford III was shot and killed by police in Beaver Creek, Ohio, I think it was, Walmart, and that's an open carry state, and they shot him on sight basically because he had a air rifle that he got off the shelf in Walmart. This is an open carry state. When has the NFL moved a game because too many African Americans were being shot and killed by police? It's just very interesting. The NBA will move a game because of a transgender bathroom bill in the state of North Carolina. What that bathroom bill affects what? 1% of the North Carolina population? 2% of the North Carolina population? Nobody shot and killed. And I mean, you know, a lot of them, I mean, hell, if you don't say anything, how they gonna know you transgender? Is somebody gonna be at the door patting you down? I mean, so I think we need to have an economic boycott against the NBA also. Personally, I think we need to have an economic boycott against the NBA as well. All right. So now the press release goes on to say, now it's our turn to take a stand on his behalf. The NFL could care less about players' First Amendment rights, social justice, human rights, or the fact that African Americans and Latinos continue to be killed by police nationwide. Kaepernick's teammates voted him the most inspirational, the Lynn Eshmont ESHMONT Award, demonstrating what his teammates thought of his stance and character. And this is what Najee Ali said of Project Hope. Okay, he's the CEO of Project Islamic Hope out of LA. Now, the National Action Network stands in support of Colin Kaepernick and will lead a statewide boycott of the NFL, along with encouraging others not to attend LA Rams games, LA Chargers games, or Oakland Raiders games until Colin Kaepernick is signed to an NFL team. And this is what Pastor K.W. Tullos said, who's the Western Regional Director of the National Action Network LA chapter, and that's Reverend Sharpton's organization. Okay. Now, Najee Ali and Pastor Tullos say that the coalition's first NFL preseason protest will be Saturday, August 12th at 3 p.m. at 39th and Figueroa Street, outside of the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum, where the LA Rams will play their home schedule during the 2017 NFL season. Okay, so you have this article here, and with, I know we're coming up on a break. We have Gia Kai coming up from the African World Festival in a few minutes here. We have a guest on coming up. You have this article here. Then you have BlackAmericaWeb.com has an article also about this. LA civil rights activists plan protests over planned protest of NFL over Colin Kaepernick blackballing. Okay, so you have that article also from BlackAmericaWeb.com. A good article from Huffington Post, Black Voices. Just 3% of NFL fans claim they turned off games over Colin Kaepernick's protests. Now, this is from just a few days ago, July 27th, 2017. Just 3% of NFL fans claim they turned off games over Colin Kaepernick's protests. A new survey finds little evidence for the theory that Kaepernick's protest caused NFL ratings to drop, okay? And this is what they were saying last season, and what some NFL owners and things like this were trying to say last season, was that Kaepernick was causing a reduction in the ratings. Now, we do know that you had some people, mainly white people, some of them, not all of them, some of them at the games booing Kaepernick and things like this when he took a knee, right? We do know that. But when you look at this article, and there was even articles late in the season last year that talked about how people are watching the games differently. People are DVRing the games. People are watching games digitally. There are different ways to watch the game as opposed to just sitting in front of the TV and watching it live, okay? And that's cutting into the ratings of the NFL late last season, okay? When the NFL ratings began to decline during the 2016 season, a popular narrative took hold, primarily among conservatives. You see this all throughout Fox News, unfair and unbalanced, okay? The huge propaganda machine, Fox News. This is why a lot of ignorant white people, not all white people are ignorant, but Donald Trump's white supporters are ignorant, most of them, okay? They just, and if you saw the rally he did tonight, I mean, you know, these are people, you could tell these are people who didn't go to college, most of them. A lot of these a lot of ignorant people who sit up and watch Fox News all day, and Fox News lies to them. They don't know how to fact check this information. They just sit up here and believe this nonsense, okay? So when the NFL's ratings began to decline during the 2016 season, a popular narrative took hold primarily among conservatives that former San Francisco 49ers quarterback Colin Kaepernick and his national anthem protests were to blame. A new survey, however, shows that likely was not the case. In fact, just 3% of sports fans say they watched fewer NFL games a season ago because of Kaepernick's protests, according to the survey from J.D. Power, which is a global research company. And J.D. Power, you know, my background is in marketing, so J.D. Power, I mean, these guys are like the gold standard for surveys, okay? J.D. Power, they're well respected at doing research, market research, doing surveys, etc. Now, the survey, first reported by ESPN, asked more than 9,200 people who had ever attended at least one major sporting event about their sport watching habits. A pertinent topic, given that the NFL experienced a 9% television ratings decline in 2016. Okay, now this happened. Now remember when the ratings decline was reported, and they tried to blame Colin Kaepernick for this. Okay, like one man is going to cause your ratings to drop 9%. Okay, really. Okay, and other leagues and sports networks like ESPN have felt the crunch also. Okay, now I need to monitor for our guests here. So Najee will be calling in a few minutes. All right. Okay, let's go back to this. Now, ESPN framed its story around the fact that the National Anthem protests were the number one reason for fans said they were tuning out. ESPN framed its story around the fact that National Anthem protests were the number one reason fans said they were tuning out of the NFL, since 26% of respondents who reported that they had watched fewer NFL games blamed Colin Kaepernick and the other players who kneeled or raised their fists during the Star Spangled Banner to protest police killings of black people. Okay, and I like to see those brothers with their fists raised in the air also. I ain't kneeling, but I'll have my fists up in the air. You know, and I don't stand for the national anthem. I don't salute the flag either. Okay. The pledge allegiance to the flag. Pledge allegiance is not in the Constitution. Pledge allegiance was created in 1892 by a white minister named Francis Bellamy. Francis Bellamy, and he was going to have school children recite this Pledge of Allegiance during a 400-year anniversary celebration for Columbus so-called discovering the New World. This is where the Pledge of Allegiance comes from, okay? And originally, at a point during the Pledge of Allegiance, you know, you start out with your hand over your heart. Originally, you extend your right arm, okay, at a 45-degree angle. But during World War II, they're going to change this because when they extended their arm, it looked like a Nazi salute. So they're going to change this during World War II, where you keep your hand over your heart during the whole time. But this is something created. This is something created by a white minister for school children to recite at a 400-year anniversary for Christopher Columbus. Okay, this is where the Pledge of Allegiance comes from. The National Anthem did not become the National Anthem until 1931. Now, it was written September 13th, 1814 by Francis Scott Key. And it was a poem called Defense of Fort McHenry. Because during the War of 1812, he's on a battleship and he witnesses the attack on Fort McHenry, okay, by the British forces. And he writes a poem the next morning about this. Later that year, the poem is going to be put to music, and it's going to be called the Star Spangled Banner. But it's not till 1931 that it becomes actually the national anthem. Okay, so it's been less than 100 years that the Star Spangled Banner has actually been the national anthem. All right, this is history. We gotta understand this history. So when people come at me with this nonsense, I know how to properly respond. All right. Let me check here to see if NG is on. All right. Okay, so let's continue quickly because we have a guest coming up. All right, so the majority of the survey's respondents actually said they had either watched more, 27%, so 27% said they watched either more NFL games or the same amount. 62% said they watched the same amount, while only 12% of respondents reported watching less NFL games. Maybe it's because their team sucked. Maybe that's why. 26% of those 12% who said they watched less NFL games, okay, blame Colin Kaepernick, meaning the number of people who tuned out over his protest was in fact fairly small. Okay, so 26% of that 12% is 3%. Okay, so after all this hoopla, when they actually do the research, they find that really only 3% of NFL viewers tuned out because of Colin Kaepernick's stance. Okay, not 9%. All right, so check this out from Huffington Post Black Voices. Just 3% of NFL fans claim they turned off games over Colin Kaepernick's protests. All right, Huffington Post Black Voices. Hey, we're going to post this link on the thread here of the broadcast, so you can check that out. All right, now, where are we here? Okay, we'll post that link on the thread of the broadcast here. Okay, and I know a lot of people saw Ray Lewis, the interaction between Ray Lewis and Shannon Sharpe also. Ray Lewis doesn't seem like he totally gets it. He doesn't seem like he totally gets it. And Shannon Sharpe has come a long way also to me. Shannon Sharpe has been on fire recently. Okay. So we posted the link there of the articles from Huffington Post Black Voices. We're coming up. Okay, so here on the thread we have pinned. It says Colin Kaepernick NFL boycott. Listen to the African History Network show. You can click on that link right there. It says NFL boycott. You can click on that. You can listen to the audio of the show. Okay, because when we go to the interview with Njia Kai of the African World Festival, I'm not going to, we're going to stop broadcasting here on Facebook temporarily, but you can continue to listen. And you can also call in and listen by phone, 914-338-1375. 914-338-1375 is the call-in number if you have a question or comment. 914-338-1375. Okay. So we'll be here for a few minutes longer. I got to see where NG is. Okay. But if you have, you can post your comments here on Facebook. We'll get to those. Hey, also sign up for, if you like this type of information, because we deal with history here at the African History Network. Imagine that. I'm Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. I'm a talk show host, researcher, lecturer, and writer. You've seen some of my broadcasts here before. I teach an online course called Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa. Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa. Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. It's a 12-hour, 6-week online course. And we do it normally on Fridays, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can tune in from around the world. It's a 12-hour, 6-week online course. It's only $40 for the course. And as soon as you register, you can watch the first 4 sessions that we already recorded. And then it's like 12 hours of bonus content. Okay, we just posted the link here. It says register here. You can also go to our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com as well. AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We have a lot of information there. We have a recommended reading list of books. All of my DVD lectures are there also. Okay, so we have a class coming up tomorrow evening, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We posted a link there. You can register for it, and as soon as you register, you can watch the first 4 classes. Okay, and then all of my DVD lectures are at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can read all of my articles. We have almost 800 audio podcasts of our shows. And our website connects you to our YouTube channel, where we have about 700, almost 800 video clips on YouTube also. Okay. All right. So on Facebook, Deb said, please don't feed the trolls. Okay. I didn't see any trolls. I've got trolls. I've got trolls in different area codes. Area codes. I've got trolls. All right, so James said boycott the NFL. Kenny said, okay, Kerry said hashtag boycott the NFL also. Kenny said, let me see, try to get Kenny's comment. Okay, if the NFL is made up of 80% black, aren't you just hurting your own people? No, we ain't hurting our own people. If we boycott them, they'll still get paid. They're playing. They'll still get paid. See, we have to think strategically and long term, not short term. We have to think strategically and long term, not short term. Okay? All the teams are owned by white billionaires. Mainly white billionaires, and if they're multimillionaires, they're almost billionaires. A lot of them are white supremacists. Okay? So just like the Montgomery bus boycott, they made sacrifices. If you study this morning, we talked about on Wake Up with Steve Hood. I do radio here in Detroit also, 9:10 a.m. the Superstation. Okay, I'm on the morning show every Thursday morning. We talked about the Baton Rouge, Louisiana economic bus boycott of 1953. Most people never even heard of this. This is before the Montgomery bus boycott, which lasted 381 days, December 5th, 1955 to December 20th, 1956. This is before the Tuskegee, Alabama economic boycott of 1957 to 1961 that lasted 4 years. This is before the Birmingham campaign of 1963. This is before the Albany movement of 1961 and 1962 in Albany, Georgia. This is before Medgar Evers in Jackson, Mississippi led economic boycotts to fight against white supremacy and fight against the White Citizens Council, which was founded in Mississippi in 1954 as a direct result to Brown versus Board of Education desegregation case. Before the U.S. Supreme Court desegregation case, but the White Citizens Council is going to be founded in Mississippi, and is going to spread throughout Mississippi and spread throughout the South as a direct result to the Brown versus Board of Education desegregation case. Before all of that, you had the Baton Rouge, Louisiana economic boycott of the bus system in Baton Rouge after the black buses were shut down because they were deemed illegal. So any of these economic boycotts, when you actually study the history of them, and I have, when you actually study the history, people made a short-term sacrifice for long-term gains, for a greater good. Okay? So at some point, we have to realize that we have to stop financing our own dehumanization. At some point, we have to realize that we have to stop financing our own dehumanization. Because when you study successful economic boycotts in the past, where you talk about Reverend Jesse Jackson and Coca-Cola in 1981, which is one of the biggest economic boycotts, that was a national one. If you talk about 1960 in Nashville, Tennessee, and the economic boycott, the Easter boycott of 1960 of the downtown business district in Nashville, Tennessee, which is going to spread to 59 cities across the country. Okay, when you study all those, they realize that they could not keep financing their own dehumanization and then complain about it. So they withdrew economic support from that entity that they deemed a threat to them, so that they can push their agenda. So we have to understand that you're going to have to make short-term sacrifices to get long-term gains. You're going to have to make short-term sacrifices to get long-term gains. So having economic boycotts against multimillionaires, I think the league minimum was what, $2 million a year, $1 million a year. To have economic boycotts against that is a short-term sacrifice. They're still going to get paid because they play the game. So you have to make up your mind. Do you want to keep being treated like a slave, or you want to fight back? It's up to you. I already know what I'm going to do. It's up to you what you do. Okay, see, we have to understand this. I didn't call you a troll, Kenny. I didn't call you a troll. I ain't call anybody a troll. Somebody said they're trolls here, but I never called you a troll. I don't have a problem with you asking that question, Kenny. Not at all. That's a question that needs to be asked, and I answered it. Okay? That's a question that needs to be asked, and I answered it. When you look at, people who respect themselves don't allow other people to mistreat them. You look at Jay-Z's latest CD, right? Anti-Defamation League came out because of one of the songs, came out against Jay-Z because of one of the songs on his CD. People that respect themselves, they don't allow other people to use racial epithets against them, anything like that. They don't play that game. No, because they remember what happened the last time people did that. Okay? So we have to be very clear on this. All right. So I'm waiting on Njia Kai. Njia Kai is the director of the 35th Annual African World Festival in Detroit. So I'm waiting on her to call in. And so I can take some more of your questions here. Ira said, lose what? Fight back. Okay. And so when we go to okay, Jay, who's okay. Now, if you're calling somebody a troll, you have to say who the troll is. So Jay Will, you said you are a troll. You don't care about who are you calling a troll, man? I don't know who y'all are calling the troll. All right. Kenny said we would be better off if all races work together. We would be better off if all races work together. That's true. Okay. Now, the other races have to determine this. They have to come to this determination. And we should unite to fight against white supremacy and racism. I totally agree with that. But what we have to understand is that white supremacy and racism is used against the various races to divide them. To keep people of color fighting against one another as opposed to fighting against white supremacy and racism. Okay, so they're calling Kenny the troll. All right. Well, Kenny, you can stay here if you want to. I don't have a problem. You know, when people act a fool, I get rid of them myself. But, you know, if somebody asks an opposing question, I don't have a problem. Because I know everybody has not studied economic boycotts like I have. Okay, so I understand this. Now, Joseph Strotter says, start our own league, period. Blacks run the NFL anyways, period. It's our labor that allows the league to operate. Well, it's the labor, but we don't run the NFL. We don't do most of the hiring. We don't sign the checks. So we're the labor, but we don't necessarily run it. with the labor. Okay, we can look at starting our own league now. It's going to have to be financed. Okay, it's going to have to properly be financed. Look at what happened when the last league started. What was that called? USFL? Where's the USFL now? I mean, we could look at starting our own league, man, but we need to study the USFL and we need to study arena football also. Arena football is not hitting on much either. All right. Okay, so Friday, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, guys, I do my online course, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. This is a 12-hour, 6-week online course. I deal with the transatlantic slave trade differently than most people, okay? I've been studying for 25 years. So when we deal with the transatlantic slave trade, we can't start our history in August 20th, 1619 here in the U.S. We can't even start in the 1520s when the Spanish are taking Africans into the territory we call South Carolina and enslaving them. This is almost 100 years. This is about 100 years before August 20th, 1619. People don't even talk about that because the Spanish were enslaving Africans in this land before the British. Okay, we can't start. So we can't even start in 1440 when the Portuguese get involved in the transatlantic slave trade, because the Portuguese are going to dominate for the first 200 years from 1440 to 1640. The Spanish are going to be right behind them, and the Spanish and Portuguese are fighting each other, killing each other for these various lands. Okay, but we have to deal with the 800-year occupation of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors, who are going to reintroduce the concept of longitude and latitude to Europeans, who are going to introduce spherical globes, introduce almanacs, introduce all these types of things, introduce algebra and alcohol and cotton and sugar. They're going to introduce silverware. Ziriad is going to do that, introduce silverware. You're going to have all these things that the Moors introduced into Europe. And in 1285 AD in Spain, the Moors, along with Arabs, are going to build the first university in Spain, basically the first university in Europe, University of Salamanca, okay, in Spain. And what you're going to find is that a lot of the early universities in Europe, University of Toledo, University of Bologna, University of Barcelona, things like this, they're going to be created to study the Moor science texts, to study the teachings that these Africans known as the Moors take into Europe. All right, but you got to go before that. So we deal with ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt. We talk some about Nubia, Ta-Nehesi, etc. We deal with the African presence in this country going back at least 51,700 years. So when we discuss the transatlantic slave trade, we have to first understand that African people are the indigenous people of North, Central, and South America. Now, this does not mean that they did not come from Africa. They just came from Africa tens of thousands of years before we have normally been taught that they came from Africa. Because if you look at this country, the Khoisan were here, who come from Southern Africa, and they have the oldest DNA on the planet. The Khoisan were here in this land going back at least 51,700 years ago. Okay, and if you read the book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence by Dr. David Imhotep, this book right here, and this is one of the books we use in the course. Now you don't have to buy any of these books, okay, to follow along, but we use it in the course for reference, all right? Because I don't want you to think I'm making this stuff up. So we have a ton of references, books, video clips, articles, ton of information in this course. He deals with the discovery from Dr. Albert Goodyear, who's an archaeologist at the University of South Carolina that Dr. Albert Goodyear made in 2004, where they discover artifacts, architecture, campsites, carvings, footprints in lava, genetic M174D haploid groups dealing with DNA and genetics, stone structures and skeletons and tools, all different types of things, thoroughly documenting an African presence in the territory we today call South Carolina, going back at least 51,700 years ago. And African people were here in this land before Native Americans even came into existence. So we deal with a chronology of history. So when you deal with the transatlantic slave trade, you can't deal with it episodically. You can't deal with it as an episode in history. You have to deal with it chronologically. One of my teachers is Professor Kaba Hiawatha Kamene, who's in the Hidden Colors documentaries. We're in the Black Friday documentaries together. I just filmed my portion of Black Friday Part 2, The African Global Legacy. I was in Atlanta 3 weekends ago. We were at the top of Stone Mountain, myself and director Rick Mathis. So he filmed me for my portion of Black Friday Part 2, which debuts in Atlanta October 13th, 2017. So I'll be back in Atlanta October 13th, 2017. Also look out for me in Elementary Genocide Part 3, which comes out August 22nd this month from director Raheem Shabazz as well. So we have to deal with a chronology of history. And Professor Kaba Hiawatha Kamene, who I just interviewed 2 weeks ago, and if you go to AfricanHistoryNetwork.com and click on the link, listen to podcasts of our shows, you can listen to the podcast of the interview I did with them. Because we dealt with West African history ancient to 1492. West African history ancient to 1492. But if we have to deal with the history chronologically. We can't deal with it as an episode in history. Okay? The transatlantic slave trade is not something that just fell out of the sky. It was the culmination of a sequence of previous historical events that led up to a particular event taking place. But Professor Kaba talks about how to study the existence of something, you first have to study the pre-existence of existence. Okay? To study the existence of something, you first have to study the pre-existence of existence. Okay? And unfortunately, a lot of times people try to deal with the transatlantic slave trade episodically, and you can't do that. All right? So, and I'm watching out for Njia Kai to call in, because I sent her a text message here. Okay, so I'm watching out for that. All right, so even when we study the transatlantic slave trade, which is important to study, we can't start in 1619 or in the 1440s when the Portuguese get involved. We have to understand the history chronologically and deal with the 800-year occupation of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors. But also, the Moors are going to introduce the teachings that are going to be the foundation of European secret societies. Whether you're talking about the Knights Templar, formed during the Second Crusades, 1118 AD, whether you're talking about the Scottish Rites of the Freemasons, whether you're talking about the Rosicrucians. And then these teachings are going to come to the colonies, the 13 colonies, because 50 of the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence were what? Freemasons. And Freemasonry is based upon ancient African teachings coming out of ancient Kemet, coming from the mystery schools, the mystery system, taken into Europe by the Africans known as the Moors. So we deal with all this type of information in the online course. So this is why when I deal with the transatlantic slave trade, I deal with it differently than a lot of people. And we dispel myths about history also. So the black John Hanson was not president. There were two John Hansons. You know, Willie Lynch never historically existed. We need to throw that in the garbage can. There were more African people already here in the U.S. than those brought during the transatlantic slave trade. Only a small amount of the Africans who were taken out of Africa during the transatlantic slave trade, only a small amount came here to the land we call the United States of America. Between 388,000 to about 1.4 million. Okay, only a small amount come here. You're going to have some Africans who are already here who are going to be enslaved. Some of the indigenous people. Also a lot of the indigenous nations of African people are going to get reclassified as Native Americans as well. Now, Joseph said Freemasonry came from the Moors, stolen by white society. Yeah. And read the book Stolen Legacy by George G.M. James. Stolen Legacy by George G.M. James. Okay, check that out also. All right. So, if you have any other questions here, post them here on Facebook. Okay, so we have, who we have here? How's everybody doing tonight? All right, we got people from across the country watching. And also we're on Blog Talk Radio as well. Let's see. Let's go to this next story. I had another article here dealing with Colin Kaepernick, I think. Let's see. You can go ahead and post your comments if you have any. We'll get to some of those. Colin Kaepernick's girlfriend, DJ Nisa Diab, she compared Ray Lewis, used to play for the Baltimore Ravens. She compared him to Samuel L. Jackson's character in Django Unchained. His character is Steven. While Colin Kaepernick has kept quiet amid the swirl of controversy surrounding his free agency, the quarterback's girlfriend is not. Radio TV personality Nisa Diab posted a photo of NFL star Ray Lewis hugging Baltimore Ravens owner Steve Bisciotti from behind. Okay, I saw that. I was like, dude, that's not a good look, man. I know it was after he just won a Super Bowl, but then, nah. Those pictures last forever. Now, underneath that pic was a photo from Django Unchained, movie starring Jamie Foxx, showing Samuel L. Jackson's Uncle Tom's slave character similarly hugging his master, played by Leonardo DiCaprio. Okay, this is when his master was shot and killed. Okay, and Nisa made a point to Ray Lewis on her photo comparison. All right, so now earlier this week, Ray Lewis made headlines for advising Colin Kaepernick to keep quiet about his off-the-field activities, including social activism. Ravens team owner Bisciotti is reportedly resisting an effort to sign the former San Francisco 49ers quarterback, though the team has disputed those reports. Okay, now there's rumors about him maybe possibly going to the Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins may be thinking about signing him as well. I saw a couple stories about that. You have some fans who were upset that the Ravens were possibly thinking about picking him up as well. So there's a lot of hatred towards Colin Kaepernick also. And what I find, and I just dealt with this here in local radio here in Detroit last Sunday. Somebody called into my show, because I do Sundays 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on 9 p.m. On 9:10 a.m. the Superstation WFDF here in Detroit through the African History Network show. And I had somebody, they sound like they were white, talking about how he hates the veterans, and there were veterans that don't like him because of his stance against the National Anthem. But my thing is that, wait a second, the National Anthem is a white supremacist song. Have you studied the history of the National Anthem? That's a white supremacist song. So, none of us should stand for the National Anthem. You need a new National Anthem that encompasses the different ethnic groups of America. You need a new National Anthem. That National Anthem was written by a slave owner named Francis Scott Key, who thought that African people were intellectually inferior, and he came from a slave-owning family that got rich off of enslaving African people. So, as far as I'm concerned, America needs a new national anthem, and one not written by Donald Trump either, because I don't think Donald Trump is going to be in office too much longer. This investigation with Mueller is heating up, and if this fool tries to fire the Attorney General and put in another Attorney General and tries to fire Mueller, that's going to be his ass. That's going to be it right there. That's going to be it, because you have even Republican senators who are already drawing a line in the sand saying hands off Mueller. Okay, so this thing is heating up, and it's not a whole lot Trump can do. He can try to distract, but he's about to go down. I'm telling you. I've been predicting, I don't think Trump is going to make it to the end of the year. I think he's going to be forced to resign from office. Just like Richard Nixon was forced to resign from office also. Study the history. Even though articles of impeachment were drawn up against Richard Nixon. And the first article of impeachment was obstruction of justice. The second article of impeachment was abuse of power. There were Republicans that convinced Nixon, for the good of the country and for the Republican Party, he needed to resign from office. That was the first time in the history of this country that a sitting president resigned from office. And Gerald Ford, who's from the state of Michigan, Gerald Ford gave him a pardon, because Gerald Ford became vice president. He became president. He gave him a pardon, and 48 people around Richard Nixon went to prison. 48 people around Richard Nixon went to prison. This is why you see people around Trump who can afford it, who are hiring attorneys. Because 48 people around Richard Nixon went to prison. Okay? All right. So you can post your comments here on Facebook. Share this broadcast on your own Facebook page. Invite your friends to tune in. How many people want to register for our online course, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa? Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. We teach this class on Friday, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we do the sessions live. Anything you miss, you can go back and watch it over and over again. All the sessions are recorded. And also, there's about 12 hours of bonus content. So as soon as you register, you can watch the first 4 sessions. Then there's about 12 hours of bonus content also. Okay? All right, I'm going to go ahead and go to this next story here while we wait on Najee to call in. I know she's busy getting ready for the festival. Let's see here. Make sure she didn't call in. All right. So we posted, let me know if you need me to post the link again to register for the online course. Joseph said Trump and his supporters represent the hatred in this country, which is why black people, we as a people, must build our own nation. All right. Okay, I'll post the link again here. Just a second. I'm going to pin it so it stays here. It'll say register here. There you go. It says register here. We're going to pin that so it stays there.